Our corrupt government is gang stalking, mobbing citizens. My story. Mobbing often starts with a conflict. My mobbing, gang stalking, was no exception. In 2002, I had a conflict with a fireman. In the United States, firemen, as well as members of the community, are encouraged, if you see something, say something. Trouble is, firemen, like police, as the American people are now only too aware, after seeing video after video of police misconduct, are sometimes bad apples. This is complicated by the fact mobbing is becoming an epidemic in our world, where groups, mobs of bad apples unite together to get rid of someone they don't like from the workplace or community. Combined mobbing was an assault on the Bill of Rights made up of suspicious activity reports, watch lists, fusion centers that spread lies all over the country, and you have the recipe for the nightmare that government gang stalking is. After my conflict with a sociopath fireman, throughout the summer, I got phone calls. When I answered, no one was there. I began to find things. A chicken bone in my completely fenced-in yard that my dog, who plays in the yard, could have choked on. Every once in a while, there would be things in the yard that my dog could choke on, like a very small ball, a big metal washer. In the spring of 2003, I felt the firemen did something that threatened my safety and my brother's. I called the police. After that, a call was made to social services saying that I was paranoid. Among the complaints against me were that I called the police on my neighbors. I had only called the police on the firemen. A social worker listed the complaints made against me as, I dressed inappropriately for the weather. I put a for sale sign up and then took it down on my home. Sounded to me, rather than paranoia, this was a complaint by someone who wanted me to move. Later in the summer of 2003, as I was walking my brother, who had a profound mental handicap in our neighborhood, I saw the fireman again in a truck. He stopped the truck in the middle of the road and just stared at us. I felt he was trying to intimidate me. My impression of him was that he was a big bully who picked on people he perceived as weak to give him a sense of power. A section of short fence in the front of my house was stolen from the front of my property. A week later, I found it dumped in the road in the front of my house, close to where it was stolen. My car, which I parked on the street, was scratched about 15 times with little greenish marks near where the gas tank was. On June 2nd, a message was left on my answering machine. The only thing I could clearly hear was the word paranoid. There was noise for hours at a time. The noise from hammering, drilling, and power equipment got so loud that I stopped sleeping in my bedroom and started sleeping on the couch. One morning, when I had been woken up by the noise, I heard someone shout, "Call 911!" On October the 4th, a hamburger-like substance was found in my completely fenced-in backyard. My dog started to eat it. I gave him a teaspoon of peroxide to throw it up, since I didn't know what it was, on my vet's advice. When my surrounding neighbors went to work, the hammering would begin, and I began to find things. A dead squirrel squashed against my front fence, dead birds in front of my garage, a mouse by my garbage can, a skunk at the end of the stairs of my back deck with its head cut off. Furniture was dumped in my backwoods. I found a slit in my garbage can. The handle on my mailbox was off. Trash was regularly found on my property. Pails, buckets, flower pots, dead Christmas trees. And the beeping of horns started. They happened frequently when I came home from someplace, when I went outside, at other times. Previous to this, I couldn't remember there was ever beeping in my neighborhood, which rarely had any traffic. It happened when I sat down to dinner. I came home from the direction of several of my neighbors' home. It came from the direction of several of my neighbors' homes. I would take the babysitter to the door, and when I got outside, I would hear a beep from a house near mine. One day, a neighbor just went to his car and beeped his horn about 5 times continuously. When one of my beeping neighbors came to my door to talk to me, after all the beeping, I said to her, "Do you think I should still be talking to you?" Her response was, "Oh, And with that, she turned around and walked out. When I would leave or enter my house, I began to notice one of my neighbors would be wearing red. Or sometimes a red car would be passing the house. One day I saw one of the neighbors who had been wearing red had a lawnmower on their lawn. When I drove to the next block in leaving my development, there was a lawnmower on the lawn. When I took my brother, a mentally handicapped person, for his walk at the duck pond in Cornwall, across the street, there was a lawnmower at the foot of the garage. I saw that with other neighbors, too. Sometimes the neighbors who had been wearing red would have their garage door open and a lawnmower at the tip of it. Then, whenever I was about to leave my development and get on North Plank Road, a fire engine or a fire chief SUV would pass in front of me. The fire chief's SUV were from all surrounding districts. They would pass in front of me as I was about to get on North Plank Road, or once on the road, they would be in back of me or in front of me. Even when I went to other communities, they would be there, in front or in back of me on the road. I'd take my brother for a walk, where we often walked at a park in Wappingers Falls, and a fire chief's SUV would be parked at the edge of the park. I'd take my brother to walk at the landing in Cornwall, and there would be a fire chief's SUV parked at the end of the landing. And fire engines started passing by as we walked at the Cornwall landing. And white ambulances, too, both public and private, seemed to be everywhere we went. The fire engines and ambulances would pass in front of us as we stopped at intersections for a light. And there would be siren sounds when I went to take my mail out of the mailbox, when we walked in a park, when we were walking in front of a store. Once I went into Petco and an ambulance followed me in and someone in red stepped out of it. And there were the firemen. I would go into Subway, and a man with a shirt indicating he was a fireman would follow me in. I would walk at the Newburgh Mall, and men with fireman insignias on jackets would walk close to us. When I got to the end of the mall near Bonton's, an alarm would go off, and all the people would exit Bonton's. Alarms went off in other places, too. When I went into Price Chopper, I would go to shop in the Poughkeepsie Galleria, and security guards seemed to be wherever I went. Then the police started in. They would pass in front of me as I tried to get on North Plank Road from my development. They, along with fire trucks and ambulances, would be there on my entries and exits, passing by when I was out in the community. Several times I went to the police. The lieutenant of the town police even came to my house as I told him the story of what was happening. He left me his card. Sometimes the police did dangerous things on the road. A state trooper came out from the side of the road, coming suddenly in front of my car. 2 town police cars came at me from 2 different directions on the road, and I had to slam on my brakes. I called the lieutenant and told him I thought that endangered my brother and my safety. He told me I was crazy. And then there were the dogs. I would take my brother to walk in the park at Wappingers Falls, and a dog would run in our direction from the house across the street. I would go to Home Depot, and as I went toward the store, a big dog would jump out of a car window. I would come out of J.C. Penney's, and a man with a dog would be standing by my car. I would take my brother for a walk on the long drive that leads into Algonquin Park, and at the end of the long drive would be a car with a window open, with a dog near the open window barking in the car. I would take my brother for a walk at the Newburgh waterfront, and a man with a shirt with a fireman's insignia would let his waist-high dog walk in front of me without a leash. I would go to the Newburgh Mall, and a man with a waist-high dog would be walking toward me. A car would pull up. He would go to talk to the man in the car and drop the dog's leash. I went to the state trooper's barracks to talk to him about what was going on. He asked me if I were on medication. Then I left the state trooper's barracks and went back on 9W when a state trooper's car came up behind me, putting on his siren very late as he passed me and entered an intersection, nearly causing an accident. When graffiti was put on my house, I went to the state police again. The officer who interviewed my neighbors, Officer Conboy, after I gave him a description of my relationship with my neighbors and what was happening there, told me he thought the graffiti was the result of a hate crime. When I went to the station to talk to him again, he took me outside and told me his superior was not going to do anything about it because the town police, who I reported it to also, weren't going to do anything about it. He told me to go to his major. I wrote the major a letter, but got no response. When I went to the state troopers barracks to try to talk to Officer Convoy again, I was told he had been transferred. I had joined a bullying support group online run by the Nineveh Project and found out that what was happening to me in my neighborhood and community was not unique. That's where I was introduced to the word mobbing. Many people in this online support group were targets of workplace mobbing. As I listened to their stories in this email discussion group, I decided to write a story on mobbing for my local paper to inform the public of this phenomena. I talked about the idea via email with the editor of the Sunday edition of my local paper. She told me to go ahead with the project. I interviewed the moderator of the online support group, and I exchanged emails with Gail Pursue Elliott, who co-authored the book Mobbing, Emotional Abuse in the American Workplace, with Peter Randall, author of Adult Bullying, Perpetuators and Victims, and with Dr. Pamela Lutkin-Sandvik, who had done research on mobbing. I interviewed Gary R. Playford, who had written Bullying in the Brain, and I interviewed Dr. Henry L. Thompson to get insights about the relationship of personality type, a topic I was interested in, and bullying or mobbing. It was from Dr. Ludwig Sandvik that I got the most insights. From her, I got a way to talk about mobbing. She had defined it in detail not as an isolated incident, but as multiple negative acts that go on at least weekly or more frequently. She talked about the isolation, intimidation, humiliation that is at the heart of it. She explained about how to be classified as mobbing, the target had to be unable to stop it. From her, I learned that mobbing was different from ordinary behavior because of its repetition and duration. A neighbor can come out of a house wearing red when you come out of yours, but if it happens repeatedly with multiple neighbors and goes on for over a period of days or weeks or months or years, you might be being mobbed. I began to see I could explain to other people what was going on. Yes, mobbing took place in the context of ordinary events, but it could be distinguished from ordinary behavior by its repetition and duration. And you could see the repetition in pictures. I began taking pictures. Taking pictures, videos of the mobbing seemed to make parts of it, especially in my neighborhood, diminish to a degree. I had been in touch with the Orange County District Attorney before. When I called the DA to find out what I could do about my mobbing, organized gang stalking, I was told by an investigator, police, unions, corporations did gang stalking mobbing. When I began to send pictures I was taking to the district attorney, his response was to send mobile mental health to my house. Part 2 of this is on the next video.